Okay, folks, good evening. I'm just going to bring Neil into the show. There we go, Neil. I've just brought you on. We've just started the show.
Hello, how's it going?
Not too bad.
I'm hanging off the edge.
Yeah, that's you. Get yourself sorted. Are you doing it on a mobile phone or you got your laptop there?
No, I've got a laptop going.
That's cool. So thanks very much for joining me. Everyone, this is Neil Sanders. I've seen him being interviewed on various things. You were on Rich Planet, I think. You were on Mark Devlin's show, Higher Side Chats. You've been on quite a few shows because the books that you wrote are really, really good and interesting. Basically, would you like to give us some background info to yourself? First of all, like where you grew up, where you're from, and then how you started getting into this. I believe you watched The Manchurian Candidate when you were 16. So if you would like to take us to that part, that'd be cool.
Well, I'm from the mean streets of Nottingham, so don't be frightened. Like, but yeah, so this is where I grew up, and yeah, that's basically. So I've told it a few times. Basically, a friend of mine forced me to watch the Manchurian Candidate, like a bit of an older friend, and I was like, oh, for Christ's sake!
This was the older version, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I didn't realize at the time that it's a classic and it's really, really good. And it sort of, it opened my mind to sort of various different things. Like obviously the concept of mind control, because in this they hypnotize a guy and get him to assassinate a senator or the presidential candidate. Anyway, but it also sort of introduced me to the concept of false flags, because they basically they make it look like it's one side that's doing it and actually it's the other side that's doing it. So that, to my sort of 15-year-old brain, just totally blew my mind. And I was always interested in things like the JFK assassination and like anything a bit sort of odd or weird or anything like that. And you just start to have a dig, and you realize that there's a surprising amount of, sort of documents out there that basically reveal what they've done, sort of experiments that they've done in the past, or avenues that they were looking down, or potential sort of inroads that they've made with like the media, and just sort of there's quite a lot of sort of people that are thought of as sort of like thinkers, or people like Walter Lippmann and Edward Bernays and stuff like that, mainly. Well, there's loads, but essentially elites that tell you kind of the point, the mechanisms behind how they use certain techniques to control society and to control the flow of information, and to keep people docile or ill-informed a lot of the time, just so that, or busy, really. I mean, that's a bit too critical, really, like, because civilization is bloody difficult. Like, okay, like, life's actually quite hard. Everyone's got like lots of things going on. There's nothing out there that's going to make it easy for anybody, except being born into fabulous wealth, and that's on purpose. Like, these things are set up in order to placate the masses, really. I mean, if you want to sort of take it on a really, like, sort of like a sort of practical sense, if you've got a huge amount of people and you realize, good God, there's a lot of these people, I hope you don't do a Tsar, a Russian Revolution type thing, and overthrow us when they realize that basically now we're taking all their assets and just bleeding them dry, and like directing their lives in particular ways, and stifling expression, and this type of thing. So they have to get people occupied, and like, the best way to get people occupied is with life, because life's what happens when you making other plans. Like, it just sort of ticks along. So if you can get people sort of concerned about aspirational things, then that's one way that you can sort of distract them, fashion and stuff like that. If you can take over their leisure time and basically introduce some sort of like hidden messages, or propaganda type techniques in films and things like that, then basically you can preach to people without them even realizing that they're being spoken to. And this is the whole point, because they need these mechanisms of control, the people at the top of the pyramid, whatever you want to call it, because, as I say, there's lots of us, and we get angry bloody quickly, and they don't want to create a situation where people have got the time to actually protest and look at inequalities and stuff like that. So what we've got at the minute, for example, is basically whenever anybody's bringing up some sort of inequalities, you've got a huge push from other people going, hang on, don't listen to these people. This is Marxism disguised, or this is this disguised. And it's like, yeah, but the message is right there, isn't it? Like, there's a lot of hypocrisy when it comes to equality and stuff like that. Like, this is quite, I think it was Russell Brand of all people that said it, but he said basically, when I was poor and I wanted to talk about equality, people said I was bitter. And when I got some money, I wanted to talk about equality, people said you're rich, you're a hypocrite. And it's almost as if the system is basically opposed to any distinct type of equality, and by which basically I mean it's tops at the top, plebs at the bottom, and everyone else in the crowd bucket like fighting away basically. And this is the mechanism that is basically there. If you want to get into the real nitty gritty of it, it's called social turbulence, and it comes from places like the Tavistock Institute. And the whole point is that basically, if you can institute a low level of trauma into people's lives, even as much as say, basically, good God, if I don't go to work, which I hate, I don't get paid, and if I don't get paid, my baby might starve. Like, you know, that's sort of the point of these things, is to keep you occupied and to keep you busy, and to introduce this sort of low level hammering of constant in order to dull your critical senses, essentially, to stop you from basically analyzing stuff, because they're trying to get you into a sort of a constant state of fight or flight, where you're constantly on the defense, you're constantly trying to sort of cope. And when you do that, when you put yourself into that situation, you don't tend to give yourself time for nuance or detailed answers. You want something that's very, very quick and very, very sort of easily absorbed, that basically is comforting, that will close this loop that exists in your brain. Because, you know, there's nothing more frustrating for people than not knowing something, or nearly knowing something. Like imagine if you're watching a series, right? Okay, like a good series on TV or whatever, and then halfway through season 2, you just cancel it, and so you never find out what happens to the characters, and you never find out what happens to filling all those you know, plot twists and cliffhangers and whatnot. It's the most frustrating thing in the world, and that is a mechanism that's used a lot. Uncertainty about like the economy, uncertainty about your health, uncertainty about your position in society, uncertainty about violence or terrorism or the potential for war, and again, these things are all drip fed in order to basically, you know, to overwhelm people, and to make people, dare I say, two things: one, look for easy answers, and two, basically look usually to an authority figure or someone who gives the impression of being an authority, in order to take that advice, but also there's this thing, a mechanism that people are incredibly aware of as well in sort of control systems, is the alleviation of responsibility. Basically, if someone else has given you that advice, right,
Yeah.
it's a lot easier. And I'll tell you what, right, okay, this is going to sound stupid, right, okay, but it's absolutely true. And sort of extrapolate this to sort of like big decisions. You're saying, right, okay, and you've got all your DVDs and stuff like that. You go like, oh, I don't know what I've got. I don't fancy that. I don't fancy that. I don't fancy that. You flick through the channels. Oh, Scarface is on. Nice, brilliant. I've got Scarface on DVD. I just rejected it. I rejected it. So why do you watch it when it's on television? I'll tell you why. Because the responsibility of decision has been taken away from you. The existential worry of you wasting your time by making a bad decision. Seriously. And basically, like, yeah, serious. And like, so that's why people do that. They'll take the easy option if someone sort of carefully nudged them in a way. That's how advertising works, right? Okay, if you think about it, basically, which brand of washing powder do I buy? Well, I buy the one with the 4 out of 5 doctors recommend or whatever. Because, all right, fair enough, that seems plausible, doesn't it? But the point is that's the mechanism that is being used in a lot of these things. It's an appeal to authority. It's an appeal to providing easy answers. And the brain's got a massive capacity to just lie to you, like to lie to you, like basically, you know that's not true. You know that this politician is not going to follow through with this. You know that this advertising claim isn't going to actually do it. But you sort of, you don't believe it, but you entertain the idea of believing it, because then it gives you an out as well, right? Okay, because then basically you can say, well, it wasn't my fault. The bottle said it does this. Like the politician said this. Oh, and Kelsey Priest, they lied to you. But you know, this is again, and the people who sort of are in control of this, or basically run cults, or basically are very successful in advertising, they know about these mechanisms. They know, like, okay, this is ubiquitous. This works for politicians. This works for clubs, sport teams, cults, advertising, affiliations to products. Literally everything. This mechanism works to a degree, and it's about basically understanding how the world works, what your position is in the world, okay, and being surrounded by like-minded people, right? So let's look at something like a cult, right? Okay, brilliant. All right, the world's going to end in 2 years because the comet's going to come back and the dinosaurs are all going to eat us. Brilliant. Okay, fine. So I know everything about the world. What am I? I'm a Theta 9. Brilliant. I know my position in the world. I've got all these like-minded people, right? Okay, that basically are telling me that I'm ace and that this is right and that we're not wasting a time, right? So how does that work with the product, right? Okay, well, I know that a Mercedes is the nuts because basically it's a high price thing, okay? Like, so I know where I am in the world. I'm the sort of person who drives a Mercedes. Look at me, right? Okay, I know exactly where I am in the world because my Mercedes isn't quite as good as John's Mercedes, right? Okay, it's better than Clive's Mercedes because Clive's a dick, right? And you're surrounded by like-minded people because basically you've made a decision based on other people's opinions. So basically, the status symbols don't work without other people giving you that status. It's no good me rolling around in my Yugo, right? Okay, like expecting to drip because it's just not going to happen, right? Like, you just nobody's respecting my Yugo. It's rubbish. But this is the point, and again, that's so that ubiquitous. That sort of mechanism runs along a huge amount of things, basically. Like, what are they offering you? Okay, they're offering you this to say an explanation of current events, what's happening in the world, where you are in the world, and they're surrounding you by like-minded people. And that's the sort of mechanism that people need to look out for a lot, right? Particularly on the internet as well, because that's what a lot of people do as well. There's a lot of snake oil salesmen. There's a lot of basically people who basically telling you what you want to hear for clicks or sensationalism and stuff like that. And that again runs the entire gamut from sort of mainstream media to people trying to sell you stuff, to clickbait advertising, to people trying to get donations and Patreon and stuff like that. So this is a weird thing, the internet. Right? People think.
Do you think people are doing this intentionally? These kind of snake oil salesmen. Do you think they're aware of these things and they're just basically playing on this?
Yeah. You know, like cons are as old as the day is long, isn't it? You know, as soon as there were people trying to con people. And like, you know, that's the thing that people just don't seem to understand as well. They all seem to bypass. It's like cons, right? Okay, work by somebody telling you exactly what you want to hear, right? Okay, and it was a lie. Why did they lie? Well, for some own personal benefit. Okay, but like for some reason, people aren't checking stuff at the minute. There's a lot of like, you know, just sort of assuming things, not checking people's background and not checking character, not checking previous things that they've said, and sort of weighing it up and going, is this a reliable source? And a lot of that is to do with basically the culture of the internet and basically the fact that it's just incredibly, it's sped up conversation, hasn't it? Like the sort of conversation that you have on the internet, particularly, you know, typing and stuff like that, is nothing like you'd have a conversation in the street. Like, it's a lot more get your point in. It's a lot more sort of like, you know, focused and rude. It's a lot of the time. Like, you wouldn't speak to people in the way that you speak to them on the internet. Now, there's reasons for this, right? Okay, so like, you know, it's because you've got an audience. Like, you're alone, right? You're isolated. Now, here's a weird thing, right? Okay, there was this document called the Kubart document. It was based on sort of mind control experiments by people like Ewan Cameron and William Sargent. And what it's basically, it's a torture document, and it says that the most effective way to make people malleable, to make people to the point where they easily take on information, or basically, you break their will, is to isolate them and to overstimulate them. And so basically, that's like, stick somebody in a room on their own for like 3 weeks on end, but keep the light on and play like white noise. So that's what they do, like Guantanamo Bay or whatever. Okay, but that's what you're doing. That's what you're subjecting yourself to on Facebook and on Twitter, because you're on your own. Okay, but you're massively overstimulated. You've probably got 4 or 5 different lines of argument going all at the same time. So all these things flashing on these screens, you're thinking about your response. And here's the other weird thing, okay? You've got an audience which totally compounds it, okay? This is where the sort of cult manifestation comes in, where some people are not, but people are afraid or not willing to go against the grain. Or upset the apple cart. Now, obviously, some people, that doesn't imply in some cases, like people are probably saying, what are you on about, Neil? This is just pure argument on the internet. Yeah, I get that. But a lot of this argument stems from people taking positions, because, again, it's that sort of easy closed loop. And again, they're not idiots. They knew that this was how social media worked when they were designing Twitter and when they were designing Facebook and stuff like that. They knew that it works almost like gambling, in as much as basically you put down your information and you might win or you might lose. Like whatever your comment is or whatever your post is, you might win, by which I mean you get likes and people go, oh, you look gorgeous, hun, and crap like this. And then you genuinely get a dopamine response, because everybody likes
it's like electronic heroin, basically.
Exactly, it's very much like that, basically. Well, it's the same receptors. Like it's not quite as powerful as smack,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's the same mechanism, and that's almost why it's more insidious, because it's kind of like gambling. It's like it's low, it's low, but you're doing it all the time because you don't see anything wrong with it, and all of a sudden you've got hooked so that you can't go a day without it. Like and as you say, it gives you this response that you become used to, and you're literally dumping pleasure chemicals into your brain. So if you say post something that basically like everyone likes, then happy days. If you post something that everyone dislikes, like you tend to go, oh, for God's sake, oh, what's wrong with me? Some people might therefore start to cater their output and stuff like that, or avoid certain subjects. Or avoid making certain claims or something like that. And this is the thing, it tends to be binary. It's like, okay, or sort of like, or polar opposites. It doesn't tend to be like arguing about nuance, like unlike like the sort of the details. It's like a lot of positions, and this is where the sort of like the cult manifestation comes in, because again, if there's uncertainty in any position, right, okay, then you've not quite closed that loop. And so it's more satisfying and psychologically comforting to say, oh, JFK was shot by Johnny Rosselli from the storm drain, right? Okay. Or JFK was shot by the driver or whatever, okay, rather than saying, I don't know, it could have been any of these sorts of things. Like, and this is the problem, is that basically you've got a combination of all these different things, like the need to win, the need to get that dopamine response, the limited way in which you can communicate, the lack of eye contact and the lack of body language, because body language is like sort of, it's like, so I've seen some studies that say it's like 80% of communication is non-verbal.
It's actually why I prefer coming on here and talking to people rather than having debates on the things. I just, you post a response, somebody comes with something, you give them evidence to look at. They don't go and look at it because they're going to just cling to their belief, and then they say, oh, you're wrong, pal. Yeah. And you're like, well, you didn't actually look at the evidence and come back to me 2 hours later, and then we can go into that in detail. So I just say, okay, and just give up.
But I mean, this is the point. It's a problem, isn't it? Because like, people don't tend to want to change their beliefs on the internet.
Exactly.
And it's been shown as well that it really doesn't matter if you actually show people facts. Yeah. A lot of the time, they don't want to change the belief because it's not. They've got a belief for something other right, okay, like, right, this Wayfair crap that's been going on recently, like, I've had people argue with me like you wouldn't believe. Like,
Right.
there's children, there's selling children. It's like they're not selling children. Right? Okay, I'm very aware that this type of stuff does go on, trafficking of children. Like, you know, I know about Jeffrey Epstein, Johnny Gosh, and all this. Right? Okay, so I'm not saying that the child prostitution, child trafficking doesn't go on, particularly by elites. But there's no evidence to support this, right? Okay, so why are people so desperate to believe it, right? Okay, and people get really bent out of shape when I say this, because I don't think they quite understand what I mean. Like, you're getting a thrill out of it, you're getting a vicarious thrill out of it. What you're doing is you're imagining these children suffering, right? And you're playing detective, and now you're doing a nice thing, right? Okay, but the reason that you're doing it and overlooking the lack of evidence is the same reason that I watch disgusting horror films, right? Okay, to get that frisson, right? Okay, that taste of horror, okay, that taste of the dark side without actually doing it. It's like a safe distance. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
that's interesting. Yeah.
and this is the problem, is that basically people they cling to it because it's new to them, and because basically they get that thrill and they get that excitement and they get that dopamine response, and they get to chat to people who are all like minded and go, oh, you noticed this too, did you? Oh, you're so clever, you're like us, you can join us. Don't listen to those naysayers that like dwell on facts and stuff. Like, this is, you know, this is again, this is how things tend to sort of barrel over. I mean, as you say, it's really great, like, you know, chatting to you face to face, because we can see each other and okay, we can, you know, sense what's going on and stuff like that. But there's still that kind of separation and
There
stuff
is
like
the
that.
virtual
Like, you
thing.
know, you're not likely to strangle me through the screen. Okay, so you know, like, so you know, I think I'm safe.
Well, nothing beats
That.
real life for communication, but there's
Well,
all
this is
these.
the point, isn't it?
We talk about social media, but it's actually anti-social, because, you know, we're all up in our houses and we're not actually, you know, as you said, people come up abuse you on Facebook, and it's just like, if you say that to me in the street, or if I see you again, I'll be fucking having words with you, you know. But I can't be bothered arguing on Facebook with you, because it's just, you know, a waste of time.
Well, I mean, it does spill into real life, doesn't it? I mean, there's endless videos you've gone World Star and stuff like that of, like, you know, like, a person gets checked for talking smack on like social media and stuff like that. People have died over it. Like, who's the guy? What's his name? Oh, what's his bloody name? Bosco 300 and Rosemary 300, they got into some sort of Twitter beef, and it ended up with one of them getting smashed all over the place, and the other one ending up dead. These are rappers, like, well, so the rappers from, like, that are vaguely sort of connected to the game at one point, like, but yeah. So this is the point, but it's not reality, is it? And it's breeding an entirely new sort of way of people communicating and people sort of expressing themselves and stuff like that. And, like, have you seen that? What? Like, okay, this thing that makes me laugh. Okay, the internet makes me laugh a lot of the time because it's just so stupid and ludicrous. But the Bow Wow challenge. Do you ever see that?
Was that the one where they go outside their car and
yeah, where they're faking like luxury stuff, like, because he pretended to be on a luxury plane, and it turned out that he just tweeted a picture from like the internet or something. He got caught. So everyone was just taking the piss out of him by basically to like just mocking up stuff, like, and like, but that's the real thing, right? Because people, again, on social media, they tend to present the best view of themselves, not always on purpose, even, right? Okay. If you can't spend all bloody day on social media and stuff like that, like, you know, unless you're at work or something like that. That's when I tend to do most of my social media, when I'm supposed to be working. But you've got limited sort of. You're too multifaceted. You're too fascinating, right? Okay, there's too much depth to your character and personality to adequately explain yourself, right, in the limited posts that you've got on Twitter, right? So you have to sort of like have an angle or have a purpose or sort of have a version. I mean, lots of people basically do that. They have versions of themselves online, like, you know, I have, like, my friend's got a pure trolling account on Twitter and stuff like that. Like, just likes to go on and wind people up. And, you know, again, this is not That's not really a normal way to act. It's funny, right? But it's not a normal way to act, and that's again these new ways of behaving that are being sort of like that sort of drilled into us. Like, I mean, for Christ's sake, like the idea that basically the internet didn't exist, it is just nuts to some people nowadays. Like, it's like I'm old enough to, like, basically when I was at uni, even the internet was crap. With no YouTube, certainly no Wikipedia or anything like that. Like, it was when web pages were like, you know, 3 paragraph. The web like addresses were 3 paragraphs long, and you might never find the same site again. like, it was stupid. I remember my flatmate at uni coming in and saying, "I've ordered like 60 quid's worth of exotic cheese," and he'd done it because he'd found this site, and he would never have found this. He just stumbled across this site, and this was before bookmarking existed, right? Well, certainly before we knew how it might have existed. None of us knew how it worked. Like, so you were never finding this website again. So he ordered all this cheese online, like, and I don't think it ever turned up, actually. Now I think about it, like, but oh well, what can you do? But yeah, as I say, like, this is the point. You know, it's instilling new habits and new importances and new sort of.
We're losing a lot of social skills as well, though. The youth of today, you know, they don't know how to communicate. You know, basically they need their phone, and then they're sitting beside each other, showing their phone to each other. Rather than actually talking, you know, and that's quite worrying.
Yeah, that pisses me off. That's a rule that I try and have. Like, if we're out in a restaurant or like a pub or something like that, like, put your phone away, right? Okay, because like what you're basically saying is like, I'm not interesting enough company, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And the amount of times that people would go, I'm sorry, like, if people are watching this, you know who I'm talking about. I'm trying not to be a bitch, like, but basically, like, any excuse to get your phone out, like, oh, who was that person in the 3rd episode of Faulty Towers? I don't know. That's something. No, look at my face. Like, don't look on your phone. Like, we'll cope for an hour, not knowing that, or we'll try and remember it. Right? Okay, and the reason again is, and I'm not trying to be rude, it's drug-seeking behaviour, right? Because again, you're getting that connection, your phone family, your internet mates and stuff like that. And it's like, it's always, again, this is because I'm drastically old-fashioned, but it reminds me of the Tony Hancock quote, and everyone's like, who the fuck is Tony Hancock? Like, he was an old guy that was on the radio in the 60s, and he did this episode about a ham, a sort of long-wave radio. Like, it's like the internet without pictures back in the day, right? Okay. Anyway, he had this thing, and one of the lines that he said on it was, "Oh, this is a marvelous invention. This is marvelous. I've got friends all over the world, like none in this country, but all over the world." And it plays into, as you say, that antisocial aspect of it, where basically if you're online chatting with your friends, you're not engaging with your friends in real life and stuff like that. And again, like, I'm not saying don't use social media. Like, you know, we wouldn't have met if it wasn't for social media, right? Okay, it's obviously there's uses and stuff for it, but it's really more sort of like, don't fall for it, because it's all bollocks, it's all nonsense, it's all, like, do you know what I mean? Like, people are driven into like even when people are like rude to me and stuff like that, like, okay, if they basically back down, I'll be like, yeah, it's fine, it's the internet, dude. I don't care, like, you know, I know what you're doing, like, you know what you're doing. You're trying to, like, you know, on the internet, like, do work. Never mind. Right, okay. Now let's have a chat and grow up, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not real, is it? Like, it's not.
Bullshit. It is 100%. All these websites and everything we've got, and it can all be taken down in a heartbeat. You put years of your life into it, you know.
Yeah, I mean, that is. I feel for people in regards to the YouTube thing and stuff like that. I think that banning the whole channel was wrong. I think in some of the cases, I think they're actually saying stuff that's wrong to the point of being dangerous. But that's neither here nor there. Like, you know, I'm a free speech advocate, and I think it was wrong for them to punish them so very harshly. I just think it's shitty for the people. I just really feel kind of bad for them.
Yeah. Well, what you're saying there at the start with the elites controlling us, and we all had our place, around you of like Brave New World, the Aldous Huxley, people will love their servitude.
Yeah.
And it's got the different ones, the gammas and the alphas and stuff.
Yeah.
And
Why has no one ever made a film of that, dude? Like, that's a wicked book, right? Okay, and it would make a really good film. Like we should do it. Should I do it?
aye, why not?
Brilliant. All right, we've got a project.
Aye.
Sorry, I totally interrupted you, mate. That was rude.
No, it's all right. It's just a bit of blether, you know. So, yeah, there's also, well, Carol, you said the evidence of all the stuff's out there, like Carol Quigley and people like that have wrote all these documents that kind of show what you're talking about, but nobody uses the internet for these kind of things, you know, to investigate the deeper aspects of it. They're too busy sharing cat photos and stuff like that.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say, my G. Like there's that Charlie Brooker quote. He says like you could take virtual tours of every gallery and museum in the entire world, but instead what we do is we send funny cat pictures, and it's true. Like, but you know, again, it's you know, it's difficult. Like there's so much information that's out there at the minute, and I'm strongly of the opinion that basically that's the new frontier, if you like, the new mind control, right? Everybody was well wary of like the media, right? Okay? Everybody, rightly so, is suspicious of the news media because there's all sorts of different agendas going on there. There's like these things ranging from D-notices to basically corporate sponsorship, corporate affiliates, party political biases, just agendas of the owners, agendas of the particular presenters, and you know, reporters and stuff like that. There's all sorts of sponsorship deals and dodgy like money changing hands going on behind the scenes. There's the problem of journalism, which is essentially that basically most journalists don't actually check like what they're reporting on. They're reported from a single source, who's the sort of like the roving reporter, so to speak. Then basically it's repeated just you know, verbatim around the world. And if a mistake has happened at that first stage, it gets repeated, it gets repeated, it gets repeated, and again you get less and less nuance because basically all the nuance is added because they've just got the basic facts, and then Fox will spin it this way and CNN will spin it this way. None of those reporters ever saw the story; they just basically repeat it online. So people are rightly concerned and wary and aware of the mainstream media, but for some reason people seem to be dropping that guard a pinch, just a pinch. No, actually that's not true. Like they're mucking up, right? In regards to the internet and in regards to sourcing things on the internet and in regards to believing memes, for Christ's sake, right? And again, not checking people's backgrounds and believing sites that have got, again, political biases, connections to sort of elite owners, and they've got agendas. They're pushing agendas, and again, this all boils down to the fact that often in a conversation / argument, really, you're not trying to find out what the other person knows. You're trying to beat the other person. Right?
Yeah, I hate those kind of talks. It's annoying.
I know. And it's like, and so you've basically got this barrage of stuff that's an arsenal, like they're like arrows or whatever. Okay, you're going to say, take my Breitbart article, take my Daily Wire article, take blah blah blah. And it's like they're all financed by the Koch brothers, and but this is the point. You're using it, and nobody's checking it, and this is the galling thing. Is that basically the amount of times where people put stuff on the internet and it's like, this is a fact, blah, blah, blah. It's like, but it's not a fact, is it? Right, okay. And what's so annoying is you're on a computer on the internet. You're in the one place where you could have checked that. And for some reason you didn't bother to do it.
Yeah.
And it's just like, and again, I get why, because people trust sources, don't actually really care if it's true or not, and they've got like seconds, right? Okay, you've got seconds to respond and pwn that mother, because otherwise, basically, they're going to be there to their audience saying, "Oh, look at this guy, he's got no answer. Oh, talks a big man on the fucking thing, but like in real life," and And then you're wary of your audience as well, and think, oh God, I can't lose this one because then I'll lose face to all these people that I don't know. and 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 again, I'm not. It sounds like I'm taking a piss, right? Okay, I am slightly, right, but it's a powerful mechanism. It's a very, very powerful mechanism, and I'm as guilty of it as anybody. Like, so you know, I get it, but again, these are the things that we need to be aware of, and I strongly, strongly believe that that is the new frontier, so to speak. The control of information and the control of how people think on the internet through. I know this sounds really silly, right? Okay, but through the use of things like memes and through the use of things like partisan articles that are disguised as you know, as fair and balanced or whatever. And people again forget this about propaganda, right? Propaganda or public relations, as it is known, because when it, right, here's a funny thing. Whenever Bernays tried to introduce public relations, the art of public relations, you know, spinning events to make your company or your
it was the torches of light that he started with.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah. So like, so he's trying to spin, say, cigarettes to sell them to a new market or to make them cool or whatever. Okay,
yeah.
It was originally going to be called propaganda, but they couldn't use the term propaganda because we'd just had a couple of wars and we'd spent the last however many years telling people not to fall for enemy propaganda. So the word propaganda was tainted in a marketing sense. So they had to market a phrase to sell propaganda to the masses, and that was public relations. So, but this is the point. But the whole point of good propaganda is that there's an element of truth in it, or it rings true. Because if something's completely not believable, or doesn't give you any benefit, or doesn't give you any hope or drive or anything like that, right? It's pointless. Right? The whole point of it is to change the way you're thinking by, again, placating you and sort of feeding into your fears, right? That's how you poison somebody. You don't like stick a lump of green goo with a like a skull and crossbones flag sticking out of it. Put it in their favorite food, right? And it's the same thing with this sort of new mechanism of controlling how people think. It's data. They're stealing your data. They're basically stealing and buying all your data, all your text, all your conversations on the phone, every single thing you do on social media, right? Okay, is being stolen, put together, collected, and basically put through AI algorithms. And what they're doing,
so it's like an avatar of us all, basically.
Yeah, precisely. And what they're doing is they're categorizing you and figuring out that, well, if this guy likes this stuff, he's going to hate this stuff. If he hates this stuff, oh boy, howdy, we've got him. Because basically we can manipulate you. Like, and we're talking thousands and thousands and thousands. Like in for example, with like Cambridge Analytica, and this was years ago. They were saying we've got over 5,000 data points, right, for every single person of voting age in America. That's hundreds and hundreds of millions of people, okay? If people know 5,000 things about you, and they know about your shopping habits, and they know about your reading habits, and they know about your internet habits, and they know what sort of music you like, and what sort of films you like, and they know what you click off immediately, and they can tell from your conversations who you don't like, well, they've got you, because they can basically, you know, and let's not forget, all right, you're being tracked all the time. Your phone's being monitored. You're being listened to.
Well, it's a microphone even when it's not on.
Yeah, precisely. Right. And these feed into sort of broader systems of things like, I don't know what the equivalent is in the UK, but in America, they've got this long denied system called Trapwire. And Trapwire's CCTV thing, where basically it recognizes facial recognition technology, and then basically it just sort of like immediately brings up everything about you, so that they know what type of crimes you do and stuff like that. But it's gone further to the point where this has been used in cities in America. They've actually used it in a sort of pre-crime detection. Sort of,
so it's like future crime kind of thing. They say that you're going to create this in the future, yeah.
They've monitored you. They've said, Every day you walk down this street, or I know I'm massively oversimplifying, right? Every day, John, you walk down this street. Today, you went left. That's dodgy because the bank's down there. You're a terrorist, and it's more complicated than that. But the long and short of it is basically through the behavioural patterns that you exhibit through this facial recognition technology, they were able to arrest people for crimes that didn't actually happen
Yeah.
and actually get a conviction on it. Now, if I'm brutally honest, I do not know what other potential evidence there was off the back of it, right? Okay, but they certainly used that, like as the what's it called? What's the word? Probable cause, as probable cause in order to charge these people. So you know,
Was
this
there
was
not a movie about that basically?
yeah, like Minority
Minority
Report.
Report. Yeah, that was the one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not dissimilar to that at all. I mean, I don't think that there's sort of naked ladies lying in pools of water,
Yeah.
but maybe just for aesthetic reasons. But I don't think they're sort of integral to the running of the program.
Have you ever
But
had this one where basically, these days we know Facebook and that's listening to us, so you get the
yeah,
adverts coming up, and
mm,
I've just been talking about that. But have you
yeah,
ever
all the
got to
time.
the point where you're actually thinking something and the
Oh,
advert comes up?
no, I've never had that. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if you know this. Now, here's the thing, right? Okay, these micro responses and stuff that they can monitor through, say, cameras and things like that. You know, like how your pupils dilate and stuff like this. And you best believe that somebody's using that information again to basically just see if you like stuff because. Now, here's the weird thing. Sometimes you don't know you like stuff until you've been told you like stuff. I know that sounds stupid and
Like all
counterintuitive.
these pop songs that everyone seems to like, it's just you're told this is cool, and
Yeah,
then
yeah,
oh,
yeah.
yeah, this is cool.
Yeah. Well, again, you know, you repeat something enough. I think the optimum time of repeating something is 4 times to get someone to believe it, right? And basically, it's one of these things where the more it's repeated, the more that just becomes an opinion. Now, whether it's based in fact or it's just nonsense doesn't really matter at this point because it's now been accepted as an opinion. And then basically you repeat that opinion. And all of a sudden that opinion's got legs because it's not just one person's opinion. Someone's repeated that opinion.
Yeah,
And did you see how these things happen? And before you know it, that's become what's known as a truism. And so people are saying, "Oh yeah, this happened," or blah blah blah, or it's well known that X, Y, Z, yada yada yada
yeah,
yada. And you actually go and you check it, and it's not true. Now here's where basically this is where people would like to cling on to stuff, and this is where you're going to get into these stupid arguments, these long, protracted, drawn-out arguments that have got absolutely no point on the internet, where somebody says, right, so and so said this, blah 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 blah. This happened, whatever. It's like, yeah, no, I've heard that too. Checked it. Apparently, it's not true. Wish it was true. I'm really sorry, it's not true. Oh, it is true. You've just fallen for the message. Oh, you're obviously working for MI5. Where's your George Soros check? And it's like, again, it ties back into this crap about being on someone's side, even sort of like not if you're in a sort of group, but like just associating yourself with something. And again, like this is why it's kind of dangerous in the sort of stuff that we do because basically, everybody's intentions are good when they're sharing information. Now, some of the people who are sort of like disseminating this information, I would debate whether their intentions are good or whether they're just attention-seeking, money-grubbing sods, right? But nobody's sharing stuff to be a dickhead, right? Okay, people are sharing stuff because basically they've got a vested belief that this is true and they want to do some good and they want to help. Now, by cruel twist of fate, those types of people are the easiest people to trick and to con because the nicer a person you are, the less like the less likely you are to be nasty, and so the less likely you are to be aware of and or to be aware of. You know, if you're not a con man, right? Okay, you're honest to people all the time, right? Okay, so when somebody is like alien to you, the idea that there might be like a 3-level con to this, and this lie's going to lead
Well,
into
that's what they
this.
say about the elites are doing all this kind of thing, child trafficking and whatnot. Most people don't believe it because they say, "Well, I wouldn't do it." You know, you can't imagine other people doing it.
Yes. And again, going back to the Wayfarer thing and stuff like that, again, people are just saying that because they want to help. I mean, the woman who did this, that amazing Polly idiot, she just made it up. But basically, anyway, like they're doing it because they want to help. The problem is that it doesn't help, because all it does is basically, well, it distracts you from looking at real cases, and it makes you look a little bit hysterical. In as much as basically, okay, fine, all right, I'm totally prepared to go along with this. What's the evidence? And then the kid that's supposed to have been trafficked actually, like, he's not even missing anymore. Like,
She's screaming, "Hello, I'm here!"
Literally, she's made a video. Like, I know, but like, and again, like, you know, you can't blame people for wanting to help, but what you can sort of, blame is a strong word. What you can be critical of people for is not letting go, because that's how you learn, right? Okay, you know how someone's a master at something because they've failed at it more times than you've even tried, right? Okay, that's like. That's how I write. I know how hard it is to show. This is how I write my Manson book, right? Okay, I was strongly convinced that he was a mind control victim, right? And it was all this satanic cult and blah 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 and all of this, right? Okay, and the process church of final judgment, and he was a Satanist, and all this. And I looked into it, and that's what my book was going to be about, right? Okay, I got it all lined up and blah blah blah. Looked into it and realised very soon that it's like, oh, it's not true, is it? Oh, crikey!
This is your book, Charles Manson.
Yeah.
Would you like, talk about that a wee bit? And I'd like to hear more about that, actually.
Sure. I mean, what the book is it's basically examining like the different sort of versions of what happened within regards to Charles Manson and the murders of Sharon Tate and the LaBianca family.
Who's it? No, not Brian Wilson, the other brother, Dennis Wilson.
Well, yeah, they're all involved. I mean, Brian. Neil Young and recorded an album at Brian's home studio. Right, Brian went off his head, quite famously, and spent a year in bed and then would never get out of the sandpit and wouldn't get out of the swimming pool. Prime batshit. Like, but you know, he got away with it because basically he's an absolute genius, and Pet Sounds is just simply one of the best albums ever. It's just the nuts, right? Okay, listen to it. Like, but here's the thing. So basically, to record with Brian Wilson is like a really big deal, and Manson recorded about 300 hours of material.
All right, wow.
Yeah, seriously.
I thought he just had a few tracks. I didn't know it was that much.
Oh no, he recorded entire albums, right? Okay, this is the point, right? Okay, Terry Melcher knew, who was Doris Day's son, knew Manson for about a year longer than he claimed in the court case. And we know this because basically other celebrities like Dina Martin, who's Dean Martin's daughter, she wrote in her autobiography that she was at a party where Terry was introducing his new protege, Charles, to all these people. And basically the long and short of it was they were going to do a group. Bobby Beausoleil, who killed Gary Hinman, he was going to be on the guitar. But Gary Hinman was going to be on the keyboard. Oh God, it's like Mayhem and Burzum. Gary Hinman was going to be on the keyboards. The girls, they were going to be the backing singers, and the group was going to be called the Family Jams. So that's where the idea of Manson family comes from. It wasn't a cult, okay? It was a group of people who were involved in criminal activities, such as, I think he was pimping out the girls, and they were definitely stealing cars and running drugs for potentially for mafia contacts as well. And going to Mexico and picking up the drugs, which is why I think they had dune buggies, and nobody seems to have picked up on that. It's like, oh, dune buggies, they'd be brilliant, wouldn't they? Whipping across the desert, getting into Mexico, and coming back with loads of drugs. You could evade the police and all sorts. But sorry. So basically, the long and short of it is that like that what you've been told about Manson is very different to what actually happened. Like he was a criminal and he was a pimp. He wasn't a cult leader. He wasn't a Satanist. The murders weren't planned. The murders weren't ordered by Charlie. They were all done by the guy called Tex.
Well, he
And
never actually carried out the murders. You're right, yeah, but then
yeah,
he got done for them.
yeah, absolutely. He got done for both conspiracy and for murder, which doesn't make any sense because the
Right.
other people got done for murder as well. So
So
either
why did they pick on him? Because he looked crazy and it was like a fear factor on the TV and
yeah, pretty much. To disguise what the murders were really about was a horrible drug burn. Like basically, oh, his name just literally fell out of my head. Wojtek Wachowski and Jay Sebring were selling drugs, particularly a drug called MDA, which is basically like ecstasy, and coke and LSD. And Wojtek had ripped Linda Kasabian, who was the prime witness for the prosecution, and Tex, who were boyfriend and girlfriend, ripped them off for about $1,000 worth of bad MDA. And so they decided, they knew Jay Sebring was getting a delivery of drugs, and they decided, well, we're going to rob it. It's dead straightforward. We're going to rob it. Didn't expect Sharon to be there because Sharon was supposed to be staying over at her mate Sheila Wells's house, but at the last minute she changed her mind because she had stomachache, so or she felt sick or something like that. So anywho, Tex turns up and tries to rob them, realizes all the drugs aren't there. Sharon kicks off, she gets stabbed to death, and then they kill the rest of them. Or they didn't actually kill them all, they actually left Abigail Folger and Wojtek alive but tied up. And then Charles Manson went back to the scene of the crime at 4 a.m, and they finished them off by shooting them and stabbing them to death. And which means that actually Charlie was present for at least 2 murders. So here's the stupid thing, okay? He's not guilty of what he was charged with, but he is actually guilty of accessory to at least 2 murders.
it's complicit.
Yeah, totally. And he's not a nice guy, Charlie. Like, okay, he's an interesting guy, okay, but he committed at least 6 felonies whilst he's out on parole, so he should have been back in prison anyway. There's a lot of strangeness with this case, basically, and he committed statutory rape and an actual rape, and cutting people's ears off and stuff like that. He's not to be mucked about with by any stretch of the imagination. But what the book is basically, it's like, there's the prosecution version, which is the Helter Skelter version of the story. There's the concept of Operation Chaos, which is Mae Brussel, which is that he was a sort of CIA operative to sort of muck up the 60s. There's the Ed Sanders version, which is basically he was a satanic cult. And then there's the Nicholas Schreck version that basically is, and the guy that wrote Live Freaky, Die Freaky, his name's just gone completely out of my head. He was a keyboard player for the Beach Boys. Those two have got the idea that it's it's a drug burn, and that basically that's the reason that the whole murders went down. And,
so this is what you've done in your book. You've presented all these different versions.
Yeah, right. Basically, and what I did was do a timeline by getting sort of like evidence that you can sort of check and like you can corroborate, getting a physical timeline of where people were on what day, and going from basically from when does it go? From the murders to when Manson's sent to prison, and then it goes back to when he's born up until he's sent to prison again. And basically just by doing that and by putting figuring out where he was on certain dates and cross-checking it with other people's autobiographies and stuff like that, you can immediately go, oh, well, little Paul was lying, and Barbara Hoyt was lying, and the prosecution lied about this because it couldn't have happened because they weren't even in the city at the day that they said it happened. Stuff like that, basically. Yeah. So it tries to be a sort of a quite detailed examination of what happened. And then what I've done as well is I've actually looked at what Manson said. I've looked at all these sort of interviews.
He's done quite a lot from prison afterwards, yeah?
Yeah, he's done loads, but they're all completely impenetrable because he talks like a maniac. Okay. So you've got to figure out his slang. You've got to figure out what he means when he says the Frenchman or New York or the Catholic cross, or when he says I'm Ice Pick in New York, or when he makes references to Sylvester Stallone, and that sort of thing, or when he calls Tex a rumpkin. There's all sorts of clues. Essentially, Charlie has told you exactly what was happening in all the murders. He's laid it out. If you go through the interviews, he's said from start to finish, this is what happened. This is why it happened. This is why they set me up, and this is how they got away with setting me up. And what must have been frustrating for him was the fact that basically no one's listening to him and no one's taking him seriously.
So what was your motive for writing the book? Did you just look into it, and as you said, oh, this doesn't add up, so you want to get to the truth and put
I was just interested in Charles Manson. I just decided, I'm going to write a book about Charles Manson because I was fascinated with him. I became fascinated with the idea, the erroneous idea of him as a cult leader. Because I was like, this is incredible. And I read The Family and I read everything that I could watch this. And he's an incredibly charismatic person, a very interesting person. And it's, he's an American icon. He's fascinating like all unusual people are fascinating, and there's so much lore around it and so many sort of weird connections because to be fair, it spans an incredible amount of time as well, doesn't it? Because actually, I mean, he's only out of prison for 3 years, but his life story is 33 years and stuff like that. But in those 3 years, he managed to rub shoulders with some really, really fascinating people and get involved in some really, really crazy shit. And it really just fascinates me. And again, I was initially sort of enamored with the Ed Sanders version, and then William Scanlon Murphy, that's the guy. Then I found out about the William Scanlon Murphy version, which is the drug man. And then I read the Nicholas Schreck book, which is really, really great. He sort of expands on his own personal knowledge of Manson from meeting him, and appraises the William Scanlon Murphy thing. And I think it's really great. Some bits that I really don't agree with, and some bits in it that I think, I don't think that makes sense. But of all the theories, the Scanlon Murphy Schreck theory is, to my mind, the most solid, and I think it really does hold water. What they said, that it was just a grubby little drug burn, basically.
Because I was just thinking, you got involved in Manson because in your first book, you talk about not only how elites control, but they use a similar kind of techniques. Cult leaders use these kind of techniques to kind of control the group. They'll shower somebody with love, these love bombs, and have a group think and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah. But it's the same thing, my dude. It's basically, it boils down to, it's let people feel that they're surrounded by like-minded people who like them. Tell them what's up, what's down, what's left, what's right. Simplify the world as well, right? Okay, because you basically, cast off all that crap, jobs, taxes, bills, blah, 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 blah. We've got a comet to catch. It just makes life a lot simpler and give them their position in the world, because it just gives you that security, whether that security is real, in essence, or whether it turns out to be a con.
Doesn't matter as long as they're following you.
Yeah. As long as you believe it, this is the point. It's I suppose it's like magic, isn't it? It's only as effective as you are willing to go along with the trick. If you're sitting there going, I don't think David Copperfield's flying, then you're missing the point of it, and it's not gonna work. And so, but again, this is the horrible thing about sort of all of these mechanisms, is that they're better if they're done to people who are not aware that it's happening, okay, and nicer, less streetwise people. That's the horrible thing.
I kind of fall for a lot of sales pitches and stuff like that, because I'm a trusted person, honest.
Yeah.
And say, oh, this works, that's great, okay, that sounds good, so I'm an easy sale, Whereas
there's all sorts of things that go into sales as well, that basically, if something's on the middle shelf, in the middle of the shelf, you're more likely to buy it. Men are more likely to buy the most expensive item, because stands to reason, doesn't it? Most expensive items probably the best, otherwise it wouldn't be expensive. I'm quite tight, so I usually go, What's about the sort of third most expensive?
What's the best one I can get away with at the lowest price?
Yeah. So it doesn't always work, but there's always exceptions to these rules. But again, like these things have been, people have put a lot of time into studying them because they want to relieve you of that cash because you just waste it on other stuff. You might as well waste it on this stuff.
Yeah. Again, what do you think these days? Like you were saying about the kind of, I think we are getting information overload. So they're putting information out there, and people are just joining it because, as you say, the brain can't cope with all this information. I don't think it's natural to a human being. It's just too much. So therefore, people just take the easiest option. It's like you should switch the TVs and internets off and go to nature and just. When I go for a walk in the woods and stuff, it's like it's like a relief from the insanity of the information, that's coming at us. And in the past, you had your newspaper, and the newspaper was quite detailed and thorough. And now it's just sound bites in the newspaper, but the sound bites have been taken to Twitter size now. It's getting smaller and smaller, but much more of them. And it's just a barrage. It's hard to make sense of things, I think so.
No, that's a very good point, man. Basically, you are barraged, and the brain can only cope with so many pieces of information. This is why, basically, if a government story comes out on a Thursday of a bank holiday week, right, or of a Friday of a normal weekend, right, okay, it's a plant. They want you to see that article. It will be the one story that says, again, interestingly, the most recent example that was seen of that was Dominic Cummings, where Dominic Cummings actually leaked the fact that he went to Durham and breached the lockdown supposedly when he was supposed to be isolating or whatever. What a lot of people don't realise is that he himself leaked that story.
So right. Wow.
yeah, absolutely. It was confirmed by I forget his name, the political editor of The Spectator. He was chatting with Carol Cadwalader on Twitter, and he says, "Yeah, we heard about this. We heard from this." She was calling Dominic Cummings dishonest, and he sort of fell into a trap and said, "Actually, Dominic Cummings is very honest. He told us about this himself." And it's like, well, I mean, it was obvious because there was only so many people that knew about it. But so why did Dominic Cummings do that? Why did he get it in the papers on the news on the Thursday of the hottest bank holiday of the year so far? Well, I know people don't want to hear this, and we're not elaborate on it, right? Okay. But because Dominic Cummings never wanted the lockdown, and the British government never wanted the lockdown either, because the lockdown costs them money, and they simply don't care. So they resisted the lockdown for 4 weeks, and then the second that they could, Dominic Cummings, who, let's not forget, said herd immunity, save the economy. Who cares if a few pensioners die? And this is the same government again who had the policy of moving people with COVID into care homes and forbidding testing of the care home residents. Okay, that's murder. It's just murder. It's just flat out murder, right? It is. So that's why he did it, because he wanted to undermine his own thing, but do it in a way where basically he was quite clever, because people went, if Dominic Cummings is doing that, balls to this, I'm at the beach. And everybody did. And after that, there was, I don't know about where you live, but social distancing was abandoned at that point where I live. And everyone was like, yeah, no, this is dirty. If the government aren't taking it seriously, it's not to be taken seriously. And unfortunately, I don't think that's the thing. I think they just manipulated it into going, well, thank God we don't have to pay any more furlough. If people start going back to work, we don't actually have to solve this problem. And fundamentally, if a load of plebs die, meh. Let them be the
well, basically, the older people that die, they're going to save money on pensions anyway. So
boom, exactly. Who's it killing, right? Okay, it's killing old people, it's killing vulnerable people, it's killing people on disabilities, it's killing people who are obese, people with high blood pressure, people with long-term illnesses like diabetes and heart disease, all of which basically cost the government a huge amount of money. Now, maybe murder is a bit strong, but I think their strategy, such as it is, because I don't really think they've got a strategy other than let's just hit it home, is if some of these people happened to not make it to next week, wouldn't really matter. In fact, it might be beneficial. Of course, that would be a desperately cynical way to look at the world.
Well, you've got to be cynical. I don't think, obviously.
No, I believe it. That's entirely my thought on it. Like, I think they've done it totally on purpose. I think they've balls up this once on purpose.
Yeah. So, I don't know what we can talk about. We're just going to wrap up a wee bit now. There was one thing you were talking about, I'd like to know your opinion of. You mentioned in an interview I watched about Thomas Hamilton.
Oh, yeah.
What happened with Dunblane. And you were saying that was the children there were revealing about a pedo ring, basically.
Yeah, there was a book that's very difficult to get hold of now. You might be able to get hold of it online as like a PDF. And I may get this wrong, so forgive me if I get the details wrong, but I seem to remember it was written by a nurse, or purported to have been written by a nurse that had treated some of the children, and she became suspicious because the children that she'd apparently treated with injuries that could be considered sexual abuse injuries, they were some of the children that sadly died, or this was what the claim was. Now, I haven't checked it for ages, so I don't know actually off the top of my head if it's true. But what I will say is that was certainly the case at the time, and from what I can remember of it, it seemed like a particularly strong argument. It seemed like it was.
It makes sense, yeah. Basically, yeah.
Well, potentially. I mean, we don't. I don't know. I wouldn't bet my house on it, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if that was certainly the case. There's a lot of weirdness with regards to Thomas Hamilton, and
friends of Prince Charles being a Freemason and. Yeah, he's done a 3-2-1 there. Ted Rogers.
Someone's trying to shut us down talking about Thomas Hamilton.
Anyway, it's been a pleasure to have you on, Neil. If you got any more books, I know you've done the Mind Control, Media Manipulation, and you've got the Charles Manson one. Are you working on one?
Well, I've got a book that's it was only a very short run that I've done on it, so there's only a few copies left. But basically, I've been doing this blog on Cambridge Analytica and how it pertains into sort of Brexit. I'm afraid to say, and basically, I did the blog, and some people don't like reading it as a blog, so it is available as a book. You can buy it as a book. There's an extra chapter in there, but the majority of the information can still be read for free on my site if you want. So, also basically, there's an audio version of it, which I think is better. Like, it's 10 hours long. It's 10 hours of me just nattering away. Like, come on, who wouldn't want that?
We'll be queuing up.
Yeah, absolutely. But basically, it's me reading you the whole book, and the audio book's got the extra chapter on there as well, basically, and it tells you about Cambridge Analytica and the people behind the ascension of Donald Trump. And the ascension of people like Farage and Boris Johnson and Tony Robinson and what could be termed the alt-right. And the long and short, it's the CIA. I'm just going to blame it's the CIA. They're all set up by the CIA and MI5. And this is 100% provable, right? Basically, oh God, I'll be controversial. Unfortunately, if the Vote Leave campaign, the campaign to get the UK out of the EU, this was backed by an MI5 weapon and a think tank in America that is financed and set up by the CIA purely for the use of instigating discontent abroad, right? So you may have had good reasons or whatever, but unfortunately, to leave the European Union was wanted by MI5, the British government, the British intelligence agencies, and the CIA. And I don't trust those guys. So I don't think it's a good idea. Also, the election of Trump was backed by the very same people. So though Trump says he's fighting against the deep state and draining the swamp, here's an interesting thing. That through, we're talking about data and stuff like that, they figured out, Cambridge Analytica figured out in 2014, what would be really, really good sound bites for a politician. And in 2014, they already had ready, drain the swamp, build the wall, lock her up, and what was the other one? What was the other one that they had? Oh, and the idea of the deep state and the concept that we were fighting against
cabal.
the deep state. Yeah, yeah, exactly. All of that. They basically did quizzes on Facebook, and from these answers, seriously, from these answers, they figured out that these would be really, really effective ways to get people to vote in a particular way. Now, at the time, their candidate was Ted Cruz. And the connection is that basically they're all in this think tank called the Heritage Foundation and the Council for National Policy. And basically that's it. Well, that's basically it. All of these things that were thought to be brilliant off the cuff remarks by Donald Trump were arranged by a weapon of the CIA who'd been stealing your information to find out what would be the most effective way to manipulate.
I think that's brilliant. Yeah, it's a great point. That's what they do, isn't it?
Mm.
AI basically is predicting our reactions. So basically,
Well, this is it. It's Renaissance Technologies, basically, which is run by a chap called Robert Mercer, who's a white supremacist, good friends with Steve Bannon, who's also a white supremacist, and good friends with William Regier, who's also a white supremacist, and he's the person that finances the National Policy Institute, and Richard Spencer, who's also a white. There's a theme, isn't there? You don't know how to say it out loud. Like,
what do you think of the Q thing then? You know, and
it's
all that. Yeah, I agree.
It's nonsense, mate.
Do you think the Q is actually people behind that? Do you think that's part of like AI as well?
I wouldn't be at all surprised. I'm convinced that Pizzagate was like I think Pizzagate was part of Cambridge Analytica smear campaign. I don't believe it was real. I looked into it. I honestly.
What about Hillary's emails and all this then?
There's nothing really there that's actually incriminating. Like when you look at it, even if you apply this mythical code, it doesn't actually work. Now, do I think Hillary's a good person? Fuck no. But Frazzle Drip's not a real video. And the stuff that purports to be emails from her saying this and blah 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 blah, and if we get caught or hung, they were all fake. And I know people aren't going to like this, right? Okay, but it's true. There are no missing emails. They were able to actually examine her server. Now, again, I'm going to reiterate this because people don't seem to work in areas of grey. They're black and white. I don't like Hillary Clinton. I think she's an evil bitch, right? Okay, I think she would have been a terrible, terrible president, and I think that she's done some truly, truly, truly reprehensible things. But that doesn't mean that every smear against her is true. Just in the same way that every smear against Donald Trump isn't true, it's probably not true that he got those Russian prosers to piss on his bed. It's probably not true that he raped that 13-year-old. It is true that he was trafficking Ukrainian girls through his modeling agency. It is true that he was good friends with Jeffrey Epstein. It is true that he and Jeffrey Epstein and Tom Barrack called themselves the Three Musketeers and were known around New York for banging a load of really young girls. It's true that Donald Trump is up to his tits in the mafia, right? Basically, at the time,
it's just the what do you call it? The gambling casino guys got him in his back pocket and stuff like that.
Of course he did. That's why he built all these buildings out of concrete because he had to buy the concrete from Fat Tony Salerno.
Yeah.
And Fat Tony Salerno is mafia, isn't he? But he did that. He was probably quite smart, but at the time he was the only person in the world who was buying their concrete because basically they jacked the prices up to short the business essentially. But yeah. So again, this is the thing with these things. Is there's some stuff that's true and there's some stuff that's not true. And just because you don't think that something's true, it doesn't mean that you think that person's a saint. In regards to QAnon, I don't wish to be rude, because some people who are listening to this might be quite taken by it. But as far as I can tell, it's nonsense. There's literally.
It's just keeping people's minds busy for shit.
You ever seen that episode of Red Dwarf, right? Okay, where he finds the garbage thing, and Rimmer thinks that it's a Bible, and so he spends hours trying to decipher these symbols because he's convinced that these are aliens that can give him a new body. Well, in exactly the same way that people are convinced that Trump's going to help them and save them, it's this Messiah thing. Like someone's going to come and help me. Okay, they're going to read that fucking rubbish and try and put some religious meaning into it for the rest of time. Right?
It's insane.
Again, I understand it, and whoever set it up, right, be it the intelligence agencies or be it some bloke that wanted to sell T-shirts on 4chan, and to be quite honest, either of those I think is plausible. Right, okay, it's clever because it preys on people. It really preys on people in a manner that basically you're not expecting it. And again, right, every single person that's involved in Q, right, they think they're doing the right thing. They're being a nice guy, right? They think they're being the hero. I mean,
Where we go one, we go all.
Yeah, and I get
it's
it.
a hive mind, basically. Yeah.
What's it telling you? Right, okay, it's telling you exactly how the world works. It's telling you where your place is. Your place is to sit on 4chan and wait for Q to tell you to put on your tri-cornered hat, right? And it gives you like-minded people, right, that all share the same belief.
It's a hive mind.
Yeah, it's classic. It's playing on people's emotions in a way that is horrible when you look at it. When you just take a step back.
Yeah, when I see some of the reactions to it, people are just so into it. It's like they're so deceived, you know, and you feel sorry for them, you know.
Yeah. And you know what? If somebody shows me some evidence that it's real, like, okay, I'll change my mind.
Yeah, I'm the same. Yeah,
because none of my positions are immovable.
exactly.
But here's the thing, right? Okay, this is like, I'm not gonna lie to you, to you or to the audience, right? Okay, I don't give a shit, right? Okay, if it doesn't fit into what you want to hear, or it doesn't go along with what Chapio said on his show or whatever. Okay, if I think of something, right, or think that this is the, or I found evidence that basically I think it's this, I know it's going to cause a stink, right? Okay, but it's going to stink. I'm gonna be honest with you. Like, what sort of a fucking arsehole would I be, right? Basically, like, oh, I don't think this, right? But I'm going to go along with it. I'm going to lie to your face, right? Okay, and hope that you go and buy my books, right? Okay, it's a dangerous tactic, actually, right? Because I've fallen out with more bloody people over the last few months, right? Okay, just because I've said no, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with it. I don't agree with it. Okay, and I respect you too much to lie to you.
Yeah, but we should, again, you put your opinion out, people put their opinion out. Okay, they disagree, but we can still talk and have that debate, or, you know.
You'd like to think so, wouldn't you?
Where did it go? Where did it go?
Oh,
you've disappeared.
I didn't. Have I gone? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
That wasn't me storming off in a huff.
Yeah, hold on. You're coming back. You're coming back. This technology, just anyway, it's no bad wee system we've got here, but yeah, it does have a few blips now and again.
No, but you're dead right, mate. Okay, I'm on that tip all day long. Okay, it doesn't matter if we disagree. Okay, so long as we're civil to one another. Okay, you can disagree. And for Christ's sake, like, even my friends disagree with me about most things, right? Okay, they don't like the films I like because they're too bleak. They don't like the music I like because it's too weird and extreme, right? Okay, they don't like they don't like a lot of stuff that I like. Okay, but you know what? We're still friends. Like, and I don't like crap that they like, right?
It'd be a boring world if we were all the same, basically, yeah.
Of course, it would be. Like, exactly. Like, you know, this is the point. But again,
we should celebrate our differences, you know, instead of all trying to make us all the same, basically.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I know what you mean. Sometimes we have to investigate and get to the truth. Obviously, that's a different matter. But you can express your opinion and be who you are, and people can love that or take it or leave it.
I've just seen a comment. I've just seen these comments. These comments. Right. Hello, Alice. Hello, Bishop. Hello. Who else is on there? Clayton's on there as well, isn't he? Hey up, Clayton. Right. Sorry, someone's just put, don't call people pricks on Facebook, which I'm totally guilty of. Like, so you're absolutely right there. Like, yeah, I often don't help. You're quite right. Like, but I like to think that you know, I'll be pleasant to you right up to the point you're a dick to me, and then basically gloves are off. But like, but I'll still be your friend afterwards. I just, you know, don't agree with you.
Yeah. Okay, mate. We're going to wrap it up there.
It was a pleasure, mate. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. I appreciate that. If people want to get their books and check out Neil's work, neilsandersmindcontrol.com is his website. And I
was just reading this comment.
Sorry. So anyway, have a good evening, Neil.
All right, yeah. Thanks, mate. Anytime. I'd love to come back. Really, really enjoyed it. Thanks a lot, man.
Take care. Cheers. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.